Hey everyone, Israel is currently in a war against the terror organization Hamas, and we know how hard it can be to keep up with all the news. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of the latest developments out of Israel, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review.
U.S. President Joe Biden messaged Hezbollah leader Nasrallah, saying if attacks continue, he cannot stop Israel from an all-out war. Meeting with Israeli Defense Minister Gallant, Secretary Blinken cautioned Israel against launching a major offensive against Hezbollah in Lebanon. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz reports.
Meeting visiting Defense Minister Gallant, Secretary of State Blinken underscored the importance of avoiding further escalation of the conflict and reaching a diplomatic solution that allows both Israeli and Lebanese families to return to their homes. This after President Biden reportedly messaged Lebanese terror leader Nasrallah, saying that the U.S. will be unable to stop Israel from invading Lebanon if attacks on Israel continue. The warning was delivered last week from Biden administration Mideast envoy Amos Hochstein, who met separately with Gallant in Washington. The message reportedly told Nasrallah that Washington does not control decisions made in Jerusalem and time is running out. The warning came as the administration still seeks to prevent a full-fledged war between Israel and Hezbollah, which began launching near daily attacks on the north following Hamas's October 7th onslaught. Gallant and Blinken also discussed plans for post-war Gaza.
Number two, the importance of Israel developing robust, realistic plans for the day after the conflict, plans that include path towards governance, towards security, towards reconstruction. We've obviously been working on these same ideas with partners in the region and engaging in conversations with Israel, but we think it's important that Israel put forward its own ideas.
Gallant went on to meet CIA Director William Burns to discuss the stalled hostage negotiations.
אני יוצא עכשיו לפגישה עם ראש ה-CIA, ביל ברנס, על מנת לדון איתו בנושא של החטופים. אני עוסק בנושא הזה מהיום הראשון, ואני רוצה לומר, לישראל יש מחויבות עליונה להחזיר את כל החטופים, ללא יוצא מן הכלל, בחזרה אל משפחותיהם ואל בתיהם, ואנחנו נמשיך ונעשה כל מאמץ נדרש על מנת להשיב אותם אל בתיהם.
Gallant said that there is agreement with U.S. officials on most issues and solutions are found when differences remain.
הברית בין ישראל לבין ארצות הברית שמובלת על ידי הממשל האמריקאי לאורך שנים, גם עכשיו, היא רבת חשיבות. אין דבר יותר מכריע לעתיד מדינת ישראל חוץ מצה"ל מאשר מערכת היחסים עם ארצות הברית במישור הביטחוני. על זה אנחנו מדברים, על רוב הדברים אנחנו מסכימים. מה שאנחנו לא מסכימים, אנחנו מדסקסים בפרטים, מגיעים להבנות ופותרים את המחלוקות, ואני בטוח שכך יהיה גם במקרה הזה.
In Washington, Defense Minister Gallant held talks with Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin focused on the war in Gaza and impending war in Lebanon. Gallant issued a plea to the United States to honor its long-standing commitment to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. While meeting Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin, Gallant said that the people of Israel will never forget America's support in the wake of Hamas's October 7th attack. Gallant emphasized that the goals of the war in Gaza had not changed and left the door open for diplomatic solutions to end the attacks from Hezbollah in Lebanon, but warned that time was running out.
In Gaza, we must work together to ensure the return of 120 hostages, with no exception. We must end the terrorist regime of Hamas. In the north, we are determined to establish security, changing reality on the ground, and bringing our communities safely back home. We are working closely together to achieve an agreement, but we must also discuss readiness for every possible scenario.
The top U.S. defense officials said it was up to Hezbollah to avoid war.
Hezbollah's provocations threaten to drag the Israeli and Lebanese people into a war that they do not want. Such a war would be a catastrophe for Lebanon and it would be devastating for innocent Israeli and Lebanese civilians. Diplomacy is by far the best way to prevent more escalation. So we're urgently seeking a diplomatic agreement that restores lasting calm to Israel's northern border and enables civilians to return safely to their homes on both sides of the Israel-Lebanon border.
Defense Minister Gallant issued a plea to the United States to honor its long-standing commitment to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons.
The greatest threat to the future of the world and the future of our region is Iran, and time is running out.
And we are now joined by Rachel Goldberg, an American Israel activist on behalf of the hostages and the mother of Hirsch Goldberg, who was abducted by Hamas while attending the Re'im Music Festival on October 7th. Rachel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We all witnessed the abduction tape that the families agreed to release, and we remember, did we need to see that tape as a reminder of those that have been left behind?
Well, what was presented to us was a few families who also have children who were in that truck, who have not had any proof of their children being abducted except for that footage. And that was presented to their family last week. And we were also contacted. My husband saw the footage. I didn't want to see it. And we all felt strongly that what happened on October 7th is so difficult for anyone to digest, even with the few images that the world is seeing, that any bits of evidence that show what happened on that day are very critically significant for the world to see. And so I don't know that it was giving more information necessarily, but it was painting more of a vivid picture of what happened specifically to the boys who were in that truck on that day.
Rachel, the war is winding down. The Rafah operation is nearly complete, and still no sign of some 120 Israeli hostages living and dead still in Gaza. To your knowledge, are there any indications of a deal in the works?
Well, we certainly are hopeful and optimistic that things are happening. In our experience in this last 264 days, when there is seeming quiet, oftentimes that's when behind the scenes there is movement. And we are certainly all praying, I think everybody is praying, that that's the case here, because exactly as you said, the worst fear would be we are now in a situation where Gaza has been decimated, and now here we are still missing all of these cherished human souls. And I think at this point, especially, whether we end, whatever end the war means, in 4 days, or if we stop fighting with some leverage to get our people back, I think that that would make sense. I'm not a military strategist. I'm not a political savvy expert, but I think it's pretty obvious that 80% of the structures in Gaza have been damaged, if not destroyed. I just don't know why more soldiers would have to be going in at this point. I think it makes sense, no matter where you are. You know, I mean, we stay pretty apolitical. I think it's just, let's get these people back now. We've been waiting almost 9 months.
Rachel, let me ask you this. The story is so compelling and so sad and really impacts so many of us in this country. What, if anything, can our viewers at home, here in Israel, but also our many viewers overseas, what can they be doing to bring attention to the issue?
It's a really powerful question because, as you know, we really we, meaning the whole entire nation, struggles with advocacy specifically around the hostage issue. People are not aware. And this is where, if people have social media, if they can repost posts, they can go to the Bring Them Home channels, they could follow us on Bring Hirsch Home, and you repost things. That's the way the world works today. And you really can help spread the message that there are still 120 hostages who are not a monolithic group. They represent 24 different nations. They are Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, and Muslims. The world doesn't know that. When we travel or when we do even international media from Israel, we are constantly hammering that home so people understand.
Rachel, I'm sorry we're out of time, but I sure hope that the next time we have you on, it's to talk about Hirsch's release. So thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
And in Los Angeles, a protest outside the Adas Torah synagogue quickly escalated into violence as pro- and anti-Israel demonstrators clashed, leading to arrests and injuries amid scenes of chaos in the city's Pico Robertson neighborhood. ILTV's Rachel Safdie has the report.
Violent clashes erupted on Sunday in Los Angeles between pro- and anti-Israel demonstrators outside the Adas Torah synagogue, where an Israeli real estate fair was underway. According to CBS News, police officers drew weapons and detained 2 individuals from a car who were shouting at protesters. The incident involved shoving matches and punches, leading to 1 arrest for misdemeanor charges related to carrying a prohibited item, a spiked flag. Social media videos captured fistfights among protesters wielding sticks and police in riot gear monitoring the scene. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators reportedly tried to block the synagogue's entrance on Pico Boulevard during the real estate event. Amidst the chaos, chants of "there is only one solution, Intifada revolution" were heard from anti-Israel protesters. Authorities intervened, declaring the gathering an unlawful assembly, while further altercations persisted despite efforts to clear the area. Despite reports of scuffles, former injury reports were not disclosed, although 1 Jewish woman was seen being beaten with a bloody face. Rabbi Herzl Ilulian, founder of the GEM Community Center in Beverly Hills, said that the protest doesn't belong in front of a synagogue. "I don't think the Jewish would go in front of a mosque or the Christian people will go in front of a mosque to do such a thing," he said.
And meanwhile, in Russia, gunmen on Sunday opened fire on a synagogue, an Orthodox church, and a police post in 2 cities in the Dagestan region, killing a priest, over 15 police officers, and several civilians. The attacks took place in the cities of Makhachkala and Derbent, which is home to an ancient Jewish community and UNESCO World Heritage Site. A church and synagogue were attacked and then set ablaze. Gunfire exchanges were also reported in the center and at a synagogue in Makhachkala, a main coastal city in the region. Some 40 people were also reportedly taken hostage inside a church, and after a fierce gunfight were rescued by security forces. Video of the shootings show men dressed in all black and shouting Allahu Akbar. Several of the gunmen were killed in firefights at multiple scenes. The governor of Dagestan region labeled the shootings a terrorist attack and said they were a coordinated effort to destabilize the public situation. He said that Russian authorities know who is behind the terrorist attacks and what goal they pursued. Though he did not share any more details, multiple media reports have alluded to ISIS or another Islamic group being behind the attack. June 24th through the 26th have been declared days of mourning in Dagestan, with flags lowered to half-mast.
And the Houthi terror organization in Yemen has claimed to have hit another ship. This time, one it claims was Israeli. However, according to officials, while the ship was targeted in the Arabian Sea, it was not struck. More from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
Yemen's Houthis claim to have used a new ballistic missile to strike the MSC Sarah 5 vessel in the Arabian Sea, taking responsibility for an attack that was reported the previous day.
نفذت القوات البحرية في القوات المسلحة اليمنية بعون الله تعالى عملية عسكرية نوعية استهدفت سفينة MSC سارة الإسرائيلية في البحر العربي وكانت الإصابة دقيقة ومباشرة بفضل الله.
The Red Sea and Gulf of Aden Joint Maritime Information Center reported on Monday that a Liberian-flagged ship was targeted by a missile in the Arabian Sea but was not struck. They suggested the vessel might have been targeted due to presumed connection with Israel. However, the Houthi spokesperson, Yahya Sarriah, claimed an accurate and direct hit on the ship, describing the vessel as Israeli. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations has said the crew and the vessel were safe and continuing to sail. Since November, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi group has been conducting drone and missile attacks in shipping routes, declaring their actions as a show of support for Palestinians in Gaza.
إن القوات المسلحة اليمنية مستمرة في تطوير قدراتها العسكرية لتعزيز دورها الجهادي لإسناد المقاومة الفلسطينية عسكريا وللدفاع عن اليمن العزيز في مواجهة العدوان الأمريكي البريطاني.
So far, the Houthis have sunk 2 vessels, seized another, and killed at least 3 people.
And now, a bombshell new lawsuit was filed today by the victims of the October 7th massacre against UNRWA for its complicity in terrorism, providing graphic details of how UNRWA knowingly funded Hamas and actively participated in the diversion of billions of funds for terrorism. The evidence against the UN body is damning. Let's take a look at the report. Victims of the October 7th terrorist attack filed a lawsuit today in U.S. federal court that provides new details on how UNRWA led a billion-dollar money laundering operation that funded Hamas. The lawsuit documents over a decade of alleged fraud and corruption in humanitarian aid to Gaza that was distributed through the United Nations. According to one of the lead lawyers in the case, the findings in the lawsuit demonstrate that UNRWA was aware of and actively participated in the diversion of funds earmarked to support the civilians in Gaza into channels that ensured those funds were used for terrorism and in violation of international law. One of the most damning pieces of new evidence presented in the case documents UNRWA's insistence that aid money be distributed in U.S. dollars, a currency that Gazan civilians could not use, and a unique practice only to Gaza that is not used in any other UN refugee program. This ensured that the dollars could not be used without going through Hamas money changers, who took 10 to 20% in fees. This payment scheme significantly reduced the real value of aid going into Gaza and gave Hamas an estimated $2 to $4 million every month. The lawsuit was filed by 101 plaintiffs against UNRWA and against 7 named commissioner generals, deputy commissioner generals, and a director who all oversaw the illegal schemes and were based in New York. UNRWA's operational costs and staff size per refugee served are nearly 10 times that of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, further exacerbating the waste and abuse of aid meant for Gaza civilians and facilitating funding and support for Hamas terrorists. The lawsuit also provides proof that Hamas openly controlled 24 out of 26 leadership positions in the UNRWA employee union, that at least 10% of UNRWA employees were members of Hamas, over 100 were proven to have taken part directly in the October 7th terror attack, that UNRWA teachers held Israeli hostages in their homes, and that UNRWA was fully aware of how completely Hamas dominated all levels of UNRWA's educational system, even printing textbooks with a UN seal that taught children to write, "I will commit jihad to liberate the homeland." The lawsuit and the serious allegations once again highlight the need to defund UNRWA and the importance of shifting control of Gaza aid to the UNHCR or other partners.
The High Court of Justice's landmark ruling on the ultra-Orthodox draft is causing turmoil in Prime Minister Netanyahu's ruling coalition. The Attorney General's office today instructed the Israel Defense Forces to draft 3,000 ultra-Orthodox yeshiva students beginning July 1st. The order follows the High Court of Justice's landmark ruling that the government is obligated to conscript such men into military service. During the ongoing war in Gaza, the Army has said that it is in dire need of thousands of additional recruits.
נגמרו המשחקים, נגמרו הקומבינות, נגמרו הימים שבהם יש כאלה שצועקים נמות ולא נתגייס וכאלה שמתים כי הם כן התגייסו. נגמרה האפליה בין דם לדם. אנחנו במלחמה בשבע זירות, לצה"ל אין מספיק חיילים, יש מילואימניקים שחייהם מתפרקו מרוב עומס. אם לא נילחם ביחד, נמות ביחד.
Netanyahu's ultra-Orthodox coalition allies fiercely condemned the High Court ruling, which found no legal basis for excluding ultra-Orthodox men from the military draft.
מה הם רוצים? לימוד תורה זה לא מהיום. לימוד תורה זה מה שהחזיק את העם היהודי במשך אלפי שנים. אנחנו לא דורשים חוץ מלימוד תורה. ושיהיה ברור, ואני אומר את זה הכי ברור שבעולם, לא יגייסו אף בחור ישיבה. הם דרכנו מנסים לדקור את בנימין נתניהו. אבל המציאות יותר חזקה. זו קואליציה של 64, והקואליציה הזאת יודעת, כולם יודעים שאין להם לאן ללכת למקום אחר. כך שאנחנו מאמינים שהקואליציה הזאת תשרוד.
Efforts are now underway to legislate in the Knesset for a law that will satisfy High Court requirements.
את הדבר הזה צריך להביא בחקיקה, זה צריך לקרות. אני מאמין שזו הזדמנות גדולה להגיע למתווה מוסכם שלא יעשה קרע בעם.
גם אני סבור שזה רגע היסטורי. אני מקווה מאוד שאנחנו נוכל לעמוד, אני לא מצביע לבד, אין לי 61 אצבעות בכנסת, אני גם לא מתכוון לעשות דילים פוליטיים, אני אשים על השולחן הצעת חוק טובה בהתאם לצרכים שמקדמת באופן אמיתי, כמו שאמרתי, בכיוון של שוויון בנטל, וכל אחד שיבחר על פי צו מצפונו או צו מצפונה מה הם מצביעים, לא לפי משמעת סיעתית ולא לפי משמעת קואליציונית ולא זיהו איזושהי הזדמנות להביך מישהו.
After 3 people have died in Israel from West Nile virus in an unusual outbreak that started earlier this month, Israel's Tel Aviv Sourasky Medical Center has established a special task force to address the issue. West Nile fever can be deadly for people who are older and immunocompromised, and there are no known treatments. ILTV's Ariela Lachiani is at the hospital.
Hi Emily, yes, I'm here now just outside Ichilov Hospital in Tel Aviv, where a clinical trial has just begun for a new West Nile medicine called interferon. This comes after 3 people have passed away from the virus and at least 42 have been infected, including a 9-year-old girl. We've seen a great spike in cases in the latest wave of the virus, which has also come earlier this year, which is expected to be due to the higher levels of humidity and heat that we are currently experiencing. As I said, a trial has begun, but there is no vaccine, so people are being encouraged and advised to avoid residential areas with high number of mosquitoes and to ensure the use of mosquito repellent. Back to you.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at iltv.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. Stay safe and see you next week.